2 days after Claudia's live video, Kellyanne Conway appears on Fox News.
So, I have to say, mother first, us as mothers aren't term limited. And I've always been there for my kids, but now I can be there more with them.
I grew up not really having my mom there, which is fine, but for her to just for them to brush it off like it's nothing, it's just really mentally overwhelming for me, and I don't really know how to react right now. I'm very paralyzed in shock. It's kind of just a state of paralysis and shock.
The interviewer capitalizes on the opportunity to have Kellyanne address the public feud between her husband and the current president.
So, Kellyanne, I have to ask, one of the people who has diminished the president very, very publicly is your husband, George Conway.
But now we have a president who's actually criticized his own attorney general on political grounds, because the attorney general allowed the indictment of 2 congressmen who were supporters of the president. The criticism being, these guys supported me. Why did you allow that to happen? And the president has suggested that members of his own Justice Department should be locked up for investigating the president.
Watched TV and Twitter lately, and one of Trump's most vicious critics is her own husband, George.
Pathological, a narcissistic, sociopathic demagogue, a cancer, a liar.
The mendacity, the incompetence is just maddening to watch. The tweeting is just the way to get it out of the way so I can get it off my chest and move on with my life that day. That's basically it. Frankly, it's so I don't end up screaming at her about it, presumably talking about Kellyanne Conway.
President Trump blasted the spouse of one of his top aides on Twitter, labeling him, quote, a stone-cold loser and husband from hell. George Conway has repeatedly raised his concerns about Trump's mental state on the social media platform, and the president responded to the most recent tweets, calling him, quote, Mr. Kellyanne Conway.
You mean Mr. Kellyanne Conway?
And writing that he is, quote, very jealous of his wife's success and angry that I, with her help, didn't give him the job he so desperately wanted. Reportedly, George Conway, citing family considerations, removed himself from the running for a position in the Justice Department. Trump continued saying, quote, I barely know him, but just take a look. A stone-cold loser and husband from hell.
In fact, just a little research goes to show that George Conway is actually the one who introduced Kellyanne to Trump. Shortly after they were married, the couple moved in to Trump Towers in Manhattan. When many residents were in favor of removing Trump's name from the front of the tower, George Conway gave a speech to the condo board arguing against removing Trump's name. In appreciation, he was sent a letter from Donald Trump himself.
Dear George, I wanted to thank you for your wonderful assistance in ridding Trump World Tower of some very bad people. What I was most impressed with was how quickly you were able to comprehend a very bad situation. In any event, the building has now been normalized and the employees are no longer doing menial tasks, etc. For our former board members, life goes on in a much more positive way. Again, I very much appreciate your assistance. Sincerely, Donald. Yes, and you have a truly great voice, certainly not a bad asset for a top trial lawyer.
George was then offered a spot as a member on the condo board, which he declined, but Kellyanne volunteered for the position instead. My laziness led her to meet Donald Trump. In August 2018, George told the Post he now regrets introducing Kellyanne to Trump. Knowing what I know now, I would have said no and just never mentioned it when I got home.
George Conway refuted claims that Trump doesn't know him, telling the Washington Post that the two have had numerous conversations over the past decade. His response on Twitter included a link showing the diagnostic criteria for a narcissistic personality disorder, and tweeting, quote, congratulations, you just guaranteed that millions of more people are going to learn about narcissistic personality disorder and malignant narcissism. Great job.
No, I don't share those concerns.
He's just trying to get publicity for himself.
If you thought the Twitter feud between President Trump and Kellyanne Conway's husband was going away anytime soon, think again. George Conway retweeting all kinds of new attacks against the president today, including suggesting that Trump is mentally unstable. This comes as Kellyanne Conway is once again siding with her boss over her husband.
My husband also has been very critical of the president publicly, which is unlike him, just because he's traditionally been a very private person. In 2016, which was known as the year of the tweet, George Conway sent exactly 0 tweets. So this is new. And what also is new is not supporting the agenda of the president and my work there. I was raised, though, in a household of strong Italian Catholic women who taught me that you air grievances like that in private, so it is very surprising to see it be so public. George was so excited, literally crying with joy in his MAGA hat, black not red, but his MAGA hat on election night. And so in that way, he's changed. He's changed his opinion on, I guess, matters or the presidency, but I haven't. And Donald Trump hasn't.
You mean Mr. Kellyanne Conway?
The day that he was out on the South Lawn and he called George Mr. Kellyanne Conway struck me. Sounded like he was sending a message.
I thought it was him being Donald J. Trump. It was clever. It's an unusual situation, especially in politics or Washington and certainly in Republican politics, for a husband to get his notoriety and power through his wife. It's usually the other way around.
George Conway, as you know, a top-shelf conservative lawyer of his own right.
It's funny because people say, Jordan, you should come to Harvard and speak, side by side, and you should do that. And I think, oh, okay, but then I'd have to give him my power.
The president and top allies restrained before are stepping up their response to George Conway on Twitter and rallying around her personally as a mother of 4 children.
These children, they're now 14, 10, and 9. And so they're all old enough to read everything.
All right, that interview says so much, even the fact that it happened before the latest back and forth.
When confronted about differences with her husband, at times suggesting such questions are fundamentally sexist.
First of all, I would ask you that if you were a man and
No,
your
you
wife
wouldn't.
were 1,000% I would.
No.
My mom literally has been working under Donald Trump for 4 years. It's been 4 years. And my life has been ever since. It was up before that, but it's been ever since.
I mean, he's the problem. He's not the only problem, but he's the principal problem. He's the reason why it all got worse.
Well, I'm going to say very little about that, but I did release my statement, and George released a tweet as well saying he was going to step back, and we're doing that for our kids. There's no question.
Honestly, I honestly think that it's not genuine. In what they're, what they just did. It's not genuine. It's all because they look at my emancipation as a threat.
Martha, for all my public-facing responsibilities and roles, I really very rarely mentioned my kids. I kept our lives very private. That's why people usually use the picture of the 6 of us from a Yankees game 5 years ago, because I've never had a Facebook account or Instagram account, believe it or not. I don't post pictures of my kids every day. I want them to think I'm a good mom. I don't need the whole world to think I am because I'm posting pictures. And maybe one day I'll get an Instagram account and you'll see, Kellyanne and their kids after the White House. You know what? I only went on one foreign trip, Martha, because I really didn't want to go away for 6 days, 7 days, 8 days at a time, 5 days at a time, and leave the kids here. Well, I did that. So I did put limits. I just didn't run around and say, and I didn't go on the foreign trip. You just make your decisions quietly. Americans, couples can disagree and all of that, but I've preferred to, remain much more private about that and try to use my social media platform to not attack people, to not attack me. But I'm not leaving the arena forever. I will announce my plans in the future.
In the days following, Claudia's parents have her leave Twitter and Instagram.
After the blowback and media attention her parents received when she left social media in July, explaining that her parents forced her to leave, this time her departure message on Twitter is much more subtle. She would lose Twitter access until the following year when she premieres on American Idol in February 2021.